Good morning. We're going to try something new this morning. Namely, I've got my hearing aids in. They're synced up with the phone Bluetooth, by Bluetooth, that is. There's no noise, no air conditioning right now. It's between 3 and 4 in the morning. I had some really intense dreams. I've been sleeping deeper, much deeper. My dreams last night that I remember, I was wandering the streets, lost in a town. It was nighttime, and there was some sort of social thing going on that I was participating in, meeting people. But afterwards, I was wandering, and there was just trash everywhere. There was water everywhere, refuse everywhere. It was horrible. You couldn't really step anywhere without stepping in it, if you know what I mean. And it was pretty gross. It was as if the electricity had gone out, and it was as if the city became a ghost city, and it was just a very ugly, very foul, very sickening to your stomach sort of thing. And things like that worry me because that part was so intense. Trying to find a place to step on the curb or off the curb around the piles of garbage that were around the streets. The streets reminded me of Florence, Italy in some ways, but then again they were broad and wide open, so it certainly wasn't a European city, it was an American city. I bring that up to you because I have no idea what it means. Yeah, I'm worried the communists have taken over this nation. They're embedded so deeply, there's no getting them out, I don't think. You can't vote your way out of this. A friend of mine sends me a message. Randy Weaver has passed away. And he points out that he thinks, or the thought crossed his mind for the first time, that Ruby Ridge and Randy Weaver may have been a false flag in order to draw out ultra right wingers, ultra conservatives, patriotic types. And we had other major things like what happened in Montana that drew attention to odd groups of people who had actually done some studying and learned things about our own government. For instance, I think that was a tax protest. They weren't filing taxes because the tax law was never voted on. It was never voted on by the states. It was never, it wasn't ratified properly. You need to read Stemper's book, The Fruit from a Poisonous Tree. Now, I'm about to get into a bigger rig, I think. I hope. When that happens, then I'm going to be able to get my books organized, and I'll be able to just pull a book out and show it to you. And I'll be able to cite things much better. I'll be able to reference things better. But really, I know this is kind of a long introduction. Let me know how the sound quality is. I mean, the stuff is directly in my ears pretty good, so I'm talking softly. And what I want to talk about is Roe versus Wade. The first thing I want to confess is that when Roe versus Wade, actually just before it was passed, I was going to community college. I was having problems in English, trying to bring myself up to standards. And I wrote a paper on why abortion should be legal. And the thing is that in Alaska, the physicians were worried because if they performed an abortion, that the law was written so that if a woman felt quickening, in other words, that the baby was kicking alive, that he could be charged with murder. So the time of the moment of life, if you will, was not very well delineated. Actually, I think it was delineated quite well. If you wait that long, it's too late. I think it was a good guideline looking back at it, but I wrote a paper on that, and of course, the liberals at the community college loved it. We had actual communists teaching back then, in history in particular. One fellow pointed out, a couple of other students pointed out, the guy's a communist. And I remember, McGovern, I think was his name, or something close to that. I asked him, I think, and he just sort of grinned sheepishly, just kept, he didn't acknowledge it. He wasn't going to say anything, but he was a communist for sure. So, that was back in 1970, 71. So they've been here a long time. However, we can actually point to even further back. We can point to the time of the peace treaties, the settlement of World War II, because the United States State Department basically created Red China. Most people don't realize that, but the State Department stopped the Taiwanese from invading the mainland. We put our 7th Fleet between the island and the mainland and stopped those good people from invading China and taking their land back. They were going to win, but we interfered in that. Most people don't realize that. No, this thing that's going on, that's American might, and any American, we're no longer Americans. You need to understand, we've been taken over from within. And nothing could be greater evidence of that than Roe versus Wade. I mean, think about it. In the Bible, it talks about the shedding of innocent blood. And how many millions have we killed since 1974, Roe versus Wade? More than 70 million. And I believe that the sentence we've had to bear is that we've had to bear 70 million illegal immigrants drawn. We have a magnet called welfare. And that's what's going on, is we have the State Department literally, and this government gives them everything they can to bring them here. And that's purposely to defeat us and to bring us down. There's no other way to consider that. Roe versus Wade is bad law. It says built upon a right to privacy. Find me a right to privacy in the Constitution. Excuse me, because I really want to find it. Because if there's a right to privacy there, then that Patriot Act and the follow-up to the Patriot Act, Kavanaugh's baby, he never should have become justice because of what he wrote up and what he conspired to do to us. Never should have been law, and it should be overturned. There's a lot of things that should be overturned. However, we're at a dire point in time. And it is so bad that I keep putting the warning out that we need our militias. Why do we need our militias? Well, without militias, you do not have self-rule. You aren't ruling if you don't have the strength to enforce the laws. And look at these laws. Now, if Ruby Ridge was a false flag, just designed to draw out people, that was quite a trap. Who would have set that trap? Well, our illustrious FBI. Now, before you go and telling me that, we have to respect the law and order, there is no law and order anymore. The FBI caused the Oklahoma City bombing to occur. How did they cause it? They caused it quite simply by telling the ATF, whose agent had discovered the plot 6 weeks before it occurred, to stand down. The ATF undercover agent, I believe it was a black female at that, which would have been pretty rare at that point probably, but she discovered it and turned it into her superiors, and the FBI told the ATF to stand down. They were on top of it, and 6 weeks later, the Murrah building blew up in Oklahoma City, killing 19 children. That's on the hands and the heads of the FBI. Now let's look at the Twin Towers. How did those come down? Well, we don't rightfully know. Why don't we know? Because it's never been investigated. Never been investigated. It was covered up. However, let's look back at the first bombing the Twin Towers, or the first attempt in about 1993. There was a sheikh involved, a blind sheikh at that, disabled fellow, and he was being worked by an FBI handler, and they wanted him to put the vehicles against the walls in the garage, in the basement, so that when the bombs went off, the buildings would come down. I don't know if that would have done it or not, but what we do know is the blind sheik did two things. The first thing he did is he told his men to park the vehicles in the middle, away from the walls. And he recorded his FBI handler. That's the most important thing he did. And he basically proved that the FBI put him up to this, cajoled him into doing this. So when I hear of a crime, especially involving firearms, of a mass shooting, I have to wonder who was really behind it, who really perpetrated it. And I think some of these no one dies in, or very few. I think others of these, it's government agents doing the shooting. I mean, look at Las Vegas. That sure as hell was never investigated. There were probably, I'm going to take a guess, there weren't bump stocks. They were fully automatic. And I'm going to guess there were probably 5 different shooting teams, one in the helicopter and several on the ground at different hotels. That fellow that was in the high rise was a patsy. Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy. I think the biggest disappointment, the biggest letdown from President Trump was when he failed back in October during his presidency to release the Kennedy files as required by law. He failed us. The boy's a failure. Okay, you may find that offensive. I need to tell you this right now. I would vote for what Donald Trump stands for pretty much all day long. But he's just another one of these actors in this horrible play they're putting on for us. So that is a shit show in Washington, D.C. This thing about Roe versus Wade and them undermining the rule of law, senators, presidents, encouraging people to protest at the judges' houses, that's pretty much bullshit. Those laws should be enforced. They're there for a reason. You can't impede upon judges. If you really love justice and if you want justice, you got to have truth. You got to love the truth. From what I can tell, they're basically admitting that the call they made 47 years ago, that it was bad law, bad judgment. It was bad, and it's horrible. And that's one of the worst things the Supreme Court ever did. Now, the Dred Scott decision was a pretty bad decision. I just learned about that recently. It's one of those things I've heard, but it's never stuck very well. But the Dred Scott decision, I believe the Supreme Court ruled that even states without slavery had to enforce the slavery laws for the slave states. They had to return escaped slaves to the South. However, I got to disagree with James T. Harris. I don't think the war was fought over slavery. I think the purpose of the war was for the Rothschild banking buddies, the boys, the sons, I think there are 5 sons of Rothschild, to split up the United States. And I believe that the South was under the control or influence of the Jesuits. However, I also believe that the real bad sin, if you will, the real reason for the war, was that the South was being taxed unfairly. Now, the South was richer than the North. The wealthiest state in the South was the state of Mississippi. Per capita income was more than $2,100 a year. And out the North, the richest state was Connecticut. Per capita income was only $713 a year. So Mississippi, a man was making 3 times what somebody in Connecticut was making. So I think it was about the disparity in wealth. And the North was taxing the South disproportionately. It was so bad that the tariffs and duties were put on at Fort Sumter were outrageous. It was done unfairly. And it was the North, Abraham Lincoln in particular. Now, you can see, this is my right side, a destra, the right. It's in Italian. This is my left side, sinistra. On our coins, all of our presidents have had their right side featured and displayed. Till recently when they put angles at it, Anyway, only one president was shown with his left side showing. Sinistra. Sinister. And that'd be Abe Lincoln on those pennies. I think I have that right. And I believe that the coin engravers were trying to tell us something about the man. That he wasn't right and he wasn't honest. Now, if Roe versus Wade disappears, things will be better. I saw an old woman, a grandmother in a wheelchair, with a t-shirt saying, "It's her right," emphasizing that. And I wanted to cuss her out. Couldn't do it, though. I mean, you got a disabled person in a wheelchair, and you're not supposed to be disrespectful to women, but I wanted to call her a baby murderer. I wanted to call her out for the killer that she's advocating for. The fact is that a lot of men have been wrong during this period of abortion. You say it's your body. Really? It's your body. Okay. So what about the man's contribution? What about the man's right to have children? How does a man go about having children if a woman is going to be able to legally murder them? At this point, I love that idea of Joyce Behar's or whatever her name is on The View. They need to have a sex strike. Cool. I think men ought to go on a sex strike. I think if we had it together and we could muster up the wherewithal in us, we should probably just tell them, no, I'm not going to go there. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and I like you a lot, but just not going to do it because I don't want you murdering my child. So what about men's rights? They talk about a woman's right. What about a man's right? Why has it never been law in any state that the woman must obtain the consent of the man? After all, it's half him and half her. Each of them contribute one cell of each. Yes, she may be bearing the child. We don't have much of a choice in that. I don't care how much of this gender bending you want to do. We don't have much of a choice. I would like to see men's rights established for a change. Men don't have a right to vote. Only women have a right to vote because of that errant 19th Amendment. Yes, it was an error. It was a mistake. It federalized voting. The problem is federalization, centralization leads us to communization. So, and you women out there are always telling us, if women ran the world, it'd be a better place. You women who've been around are pretty wise, and you know better than that. You correct the younger ones and tell them, no, no, no. We can't have women running this place. Women do not have well, men have limited stability as well, but women just don't have this the the calmness that a man can have, the calmness that a man should have, so he can think rationally and think about the question all of us need to ask: what is in my own best interest? What is in your best interest? Don't act on impulse. Don't act upon your hormones at the time, which for a woman change every 2.5 days. So women were protected for several reasons. One is they needed protection. We don't protect them anymore. How can you go and protect a woman if she's going to vote in Barack Hussein Obama, who's running the country today and destroying the country? They're not doing this for a little while to see if it might work and take. No, boys and girls, they're going to take this place down. And they want to reduce it. They want to reduce us to sheer violence among ourselves. They want us fighting among ourselves. Don't kid yourself. Trump's in there with them. Biden's in there with them. You know, the groups that are behind them are very obvious. And if you haven't figured out who they are, I'm not going to tell you, because I'm not going to get a strike for telling you the truth about who the groups are. But ask who it is you are not allowed to criticize. That's who's ruling over you. You're not allowed to criticize them. They gave us the Bible, and they gave us the Schofield Reference Study Bible in order to get us to worship those people. Yeah, and they're certainly not good people. There are some good people among them. Good people, I'd like to think most of them are good people, but I don't know anymore. I'm kind of fed up, because if they're able to call upon members of their tribe to do bad things against the rest of us, we're totally vulnerable here. The border's not just wide open, but all the baby formulas down there to attract all those women up here too. Things really headed south about 1911 in this nation. And that's when a lot of institutions were created that have taken us down. The Federal Reserve doesn't give a shit about inflation. As a matter of fact, their goal is to be the lender and borrower of last resort. So you remember in the Bible the studies of Pharaoh? Now, I don't really care much for what Joseph did down there, because he actually set Pharaoh up to enslave us. And we're dealing with Pharaoh today. It is institutionalized, but everything is going to the central government. Look at the mortgages. They all go to the same government agency, which means basically the government owns everything. So this is communism. We do not have property rights anymore. They can tax it away from us. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. They can tax our daily wages, by which we support ourselves and by which we keep ourselves off the welfare rolls, off the dole. That shouldn't be allowed. You know, this income tax is not legal from what I can tell. And according to Stamper in his book, Fruit from a Poisonous Tree, the one with the blue cover on it, that Amazon will not sell, go find it at Abe Books. He tells us that the IRS started in the Philippines. They couldn't even start it on our land here. And then they moved the IRS to Puerto Rico, where it remains to this day. And if you read the laws, and if you look at what happened with a lot of these oddballs, if you want to call them that, the people that actually did their research, did their homework, and read things, you'd realize that the tax is voluntary. But once you file it, there's problems. You're opening up a bank account. There's adhesion contracts, layers upon layers of contracts that you agree to. that you're not fully informed about. So they commit their frauds through this banking system. In case you're wondering, Alexander Hamilton, who we credit with founding our not our monetary system, but more of our banking system, the system of instruments, legal instruments by which we do business, and basically the founding of the stock market. Alexander Hamilton's real name was a French version of Louis. It was like Levine, except with an apostrophe in the middle of it instead of a V. I don't remember exactly how it's spelled, but he came out of Haiti, I believe, and he wanted George Washington to become king for a reason. He revered Washington, and Washington put up with a lot of his stuff, even though he was a different sort of guy. And I really mean that. He was the reason that young genius was able to put together our, I don't know what to call it, our system of trade, a stock market system. And our banking system was he was an agent for the Rothschilds. He was one of the name changers. So, I'm not trying to knock what Hamilton did, what he accomplished. The end of his life was a pretty weird ending. He died in a duel. I can't remember the name. Aaron Burr, I think it was, that prevailed in the duel. But he let Alexander Hamilton take the first shot, and he missed and stood there and just let the round right off to Hamilton. I think we call it murder today. They probably called it murder back then. I just don't know. That's one of those things I'd love to know about right at the moment. If you women want equality, no, you don't. You want to rule the roost. As I read to you that passage in the Bible where it says, where Yahweh says, your desire shall be for your husband. That's an error in the Bible, and I joke about it, but I really think it should be your desire will be to rule over your husband. And I know you ladies think that you don't have enough and that you want more and you need to be given more. You have this sense of entitlement. You're all a bunch of princesses. Well, I got news for you. You keep saying that if you ran the world, it would be a better place. You are running the world. We've detected there is a group behind the scenes of women that are running the whole planet. It's called the cult of Mithras. And their constellation is Draco, or the dragon up in the sky. And all the variants of this toxin that been going around and keeps going around, all of those are named after the stars in that constellation, in homage to Mithras. And the symbol of Mithras is this weird little cap, if you will. I always wondered about it. It showed up during the French Revolution. It showed up during the Renaissance in Italy. It shows up everywhere. And the other symbolism of the snakes. And it appears as though the snake is her child. She's not afraid of the snake. She rules by the snake. It appears as though Pharaoh got his power by the queen wife, and that the queen's wife called to fame, and the cult of Mithras primary power is because they know poisoning. They know how to poison people. They mastered that. Now, I think that this cult, if you will, goes back several Earth ages. It's just my sneaking hunch that they've survived several of these times, and we're about to go through one too, I believe. But Earth age is approximately 12,000 years. And you get that from the apocryphal books in the Bible. 1 Esdras to 2 Esdras. I apologize for not reading more of the Bible to you and giving you more to sink your teeth into. You do need that. I think it's wonderful that Roe versus Wade will be going away and it will revert back to the states. The only problem with that is that some of these states it's illegal. It still remains. The laws are on the books. It remains illegal. So this is going to cause a lot of consternation at the state levels as these legislative branches, the state legislators argue about what they're going to legalize and what's going to remain be illegal. Now, you folks preach diversity. How about allowing diversity for a change? Allow the state governments to have different laws on abortion, and we can see what works. We can study. We really can study. It'll take years, but we can study the patterns. We can study the results, and we can make determinations about it. But we have to allow those individual experiments. 50 experiments. I'm not sure what we'll do about the territories. That's where the diversity needs to occur, because then we can learn from each other. We can watch a state that liberalizes abortion like crazy, and we can see what the outcomes are. We can look at the states that don't have it, see what the outcomes are. I think we'll find blessing and benefit by not taking innocent life. I'd love to see a state emphasize men's rights. You know, I mean, if you abort my baby, I think you've committed a murder. You know, if you have the baby to term and hand it to me, then you will have not have committed murder. I think as far as your ability to put it up to adoption, I think that's secondary. I think the primary thing is fathers. Most fathers are going to want their children. You know, you women don't want to raise them, fine. But for you women who insist on abortion, you got to remember that God built these bodies about perfectly for us. And there's instant feedback and instant retribution, divine retribution, if you will. So if you abort your child, you are increasing your risk of breast cancer. And the closer to the end of the pregnancy, it's almost guaranteed you're going to get breast cancer. And they won't tell you that, but I will. I'll also tell you that if you've had an abortion and you still are childbearing years, I believe you can combat it. I'm telling this to you because it's out of the good of my heart, because I want to see you survive even your dumbass mistakes like aborting your child. But if you have a baby to full term and nurse that child following the natural order, the way you were created, I believe you could rectify and minimize the risk for breast cancer. I really didn't want to share that with you in many ways, but I have to because I believe that's the truth. And by the way, that's generated from me. I'm the source on that. I didn't get that from anybody else. A lot of my stuff I generate. When I was a child, they constantly corrected me about where did you get that? You know, what's your reference? I discovered early on, I'm not allowed to think for myself. I have to have a reference to that. I have to carry on the brainwashing, the prevalent brainwashing. We need our militias because the amount of discord that's coming is going to be so great that that's the only way we're going to survive it. We need men, and I'd accept women too, with rifles. We need them supplying their own arms, totally voluntary. We need them well organized, which means we need them under authority. So you don't just go out on yourself and do something, but you appeal to those in authority over you in the militia, and you make sure that they take it up the chain of command, and it comes back down to you. Go, boys, let's go in. This is a real deal. We're going to go we're going to go arrest these people. We're going to go take them down. There was a man in the RV life. You meet a lot of people. And he was from a small town in Oklahoma up in the northeast corner. And he said that when Black Lives Matter was going to do their march through their town, all the men got out there in the street with rifles about 6 feet apart. Black Lives Matter went down that street and didn't look at one of them because those men were ready to do them in. That's self-defense. Black lives don't matter to blacks because they kill blacks like crazy. Half of our crimes are committed by probably 3% or less of our population. Now tell me, how compatible are we, if you have a minority killing the bulk of us? If you have 3%, 1%, 2%, whatever it is, committing 50% of the murders. So you want to drop in the crime rate? We could go to extremes on that. The biggest problem I think we have are the smart jackasses that rule over us, among us. They've risen to the top by discriminating against the rest of us and by helping each other in a way that I don't know what to say. But there was great discussion when our nation was founded as to whether or not we should let those people into this country. And at this point, look at how it is. It's almost gone. Well, it is gone. It just, exists as slogans on the radio. But are you free? No. Are you brave? No. Land of the free, home of the slave. Welcome to Slavelandia. The United States of America is the biggest communistic power on the face of the earth today. They've taken everything away slowly over decades. They've stolen everything. They even have our birth certificates, the paper on us, title to us on their stock market. They use it in their fraudulent schemes. They use it in their Social Security, their social insurance. The attorneys should have told us about this, I think. They should have, helped us to understand, educate us. But, one other thing. I found out recently in conversation with a gentleman, professional in the middle of the country, that the colonies bought more law books. Our little colonies bought more law books than all of England bought. We were deeply steeped in the law. And Webster's dictionary was his dictionary to take to court. He had his own definitions, and he would go to court and he would use his own definitions. And that's how people were free back then, as they went into court with their dictionaries and using the terms properly and avoiding these traps that have been laid out by these attorneys. No, the professions, I don't like them very much. The professions are turned against the laity. That's what Abraham Lincoln said. And so your medical doctors are busy killing people. They kill more people than the guns do. Just in their errors, they kill more people than the guns do. And then you've got your attorneys who are they're slapping the rest of us with undue processes and with burdens we shouldn't have to bear. That's what I'll put on them. They're not being truthful. They're being British accreditation registry bar members rather than American accreditation registry members. The attorneys don't even know a lot of this stuff. And when they're older and they find this stuff out, they get very upset because they realize how bad the injustice is in this country. Most of these men convicted since about 1960, 64, I'm going to guess that's when it was, were not convicted under common law courts using constitutional law. They were convicted under statutory law. And that's something I don't understand very well. I just know that the prosecuting attorney, when he found out about it, was very distraught because apparently all the convictions that he brought to bear weren't done properly. So just imagine that. All of the criminal criminal judgments were not done in a fashion that was proper, that was constitutional. I think that's the case. I'm not sure, but some of you folks will have to look into it. I don't have enough time to look into that. I'm going towards the end of my life, and I don't know. I feel like I'm on my last legs, and I realize that America is on her last legs as well. So I look at my life and I realize a little bit of rambunctiousness. Some things, many things I wish I had done differently for sure. What do I recommend you do? I recommend you educate yourself. You got to educate yourself because nobody else is going to educate you. You've got to do it yourself. Your education is your responsibility. I got that from one of my professors, a psychologist, a female psychologist who was, well, a little bit unethical, I would have to say, or immoral. I don't know if I'll tell that story. Maybe I already have. Oof. Anyway, I can't quite keep track of myself sometimes. That's one of the things that's nice about telling the truth as your agent is you don't have to remember and cover for your lies. This government's gaslighting us, folks. It lies to us left and right. 9/11, a crime occurred. It was never investigated. It was covered up. The Kennedy assassination, a crime occurred. It was never investigated. It was covered up. Actually, Garrison just about solved that thing from what I could tell. And the senator from Texas told us a lot more about the structure of that. And what was President Trump's excuse for not making the Kennedy assassination files public as required by law that was established under Bush Sr.? Because it would take down the government. I'm all for taking this government down. I'm all for exposing the crimes of this cabal, of these elite in D.C. and in our state governments. We're not willing to face the truth. We certainly aren't being brave about that. And because we aren't willing to face the truth, love the truth, there can be no justice. The Bible said to me, particularly in the NIV version, love, truth, and justice. It kept repeating that throughout the Bible. It was like 5-6 times. It doesn't say love, justice, and truth. It's always love, truth, and justice. Why? Because you have to know the truth before you can administer justice. We need to have that. And don't give me anything about economic justice or social justice or racial justice or whatever kind of justice. Gender justice, I don't give a damn. All of those are bastardizations. They aren't justice. Justice is something that is pure. If it's not just plain justice, it's not justice. Justice is to remain pure. It's an ideal, not often achieved, but something to aspire to. Well, I've gone kind of long on this one. I don't know if you can hear me very well. I'll have to listen a little bit. At least there's no background noise. Found a rig I'd like to get. I'm still working on it. They aren't calling me back, which isn't a good sign. And I don't know if it's really time for me to make the leap into a diesel-fired power plant. It looks like there's going to be shortages on that. And the rig I have is just fine. Runs on gasoline. I am worried for our nation. We've already been destroyed. Biden is in there making sure to finish us off. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama hate this nation. They hate us. They want us dead. They want to do us in. They are a bunch of racists that hate us just based on our race. You know, this stuff about white supremacists being the most dangerous, that's bullshit. We have been too generous with these other peoples that hate us. And I remember George Washington's dream, vision. The angel showed him red clouds rising above every continent on the earth. And those red clouds converging over North America and then settling down to the ground. In other words, the Reds would invade us. Communists would invade us. So that's what we have going on right now. We're in the middle of that. And the angel told him that this would be the final revolution, the second revolution. And think of it as a return to self-rule. Think of it as self-defense. And any of you want to be proactive in that, they're killing us at such a rate and in so many different ways that I could not blame you. They are administering poisons to us. I don't know how. And we are pretty much stymied from even talking about it so we can discover what the vectors are, what the pathways are to administering these poisons. But we certainly know that there's a lot of poisons. The pesticide, agricultural fertilizer industry has got a lot of poisons in that. It's on our food. And then chemistry. I mean, there's 100,000 to 300,000 new compounds. And these things, probably for the most part, are teratogenic, which means birth defects. And they remain unabated. You know, we've had some thalidomide babies. You know, most of you won't know about that, but the thalidomide thing was a real bad deal in which the doctors were giving thalidomide, and that was causing really bad, horrible birth defects. And they did that for years under the guise of medical treatment. These medical doctors, it's more of an art than a science. Well, it's true because a lot of these guys are making guesses that just aren't right. And as far as the science behind it, it's a pretty weird science behind it because you've got a body that's labeled off in Latin names for the parts, and then you have a treatment that's labeled off in Greek names, and then what's really important are the English meanings behind it, because it's kind of like a sorcery, like this is a spell, if you will. And if you start looking at it like that, well, you're going to see things differently. I'm on too many drugs, too many medications, and I don't like it, and it's not working very good either. So I'm going to leave as many videos as I can behind for you folks to dig up in the future. I don't know if YouTube will permit me to remain on it, since YouTube's nothing but a bunch of communists. Google's a bunch of communists. T-Mobile, a bunch of communists. I walked in there, and the technician was a woman. Okay, fine, I don't have a problem. Women can do good technical work. When they put their minds to things, they get things done, usually, you know. I mean, they come up with good ways or novel ways of doing some things. She's got she, her, and whatever for her pronouns on her name badge. I'm like, what? And I wanted to tease her and say, you couldn't make up your mind? So she says, no, they let us choose our pronouns. I almost stepped in it then. All of these corporations are under the same communistic stuff. They're all essentially controlled. Eustace Mullins wrote a book called The World Order. Not the New World Order, but the World Order. And these are interlocking corporate boards that run these companies. So by being on the stock market and having a board of directors, the enemy is able to embed key people on the boards and in the system. So if they want to bring a system into a product, a poison into a product, they can do it. And then they also are so strong that they can dictate to laboratories and other scientific endeavors what experiments they're going to run and how they're going to conduct the experiments. And they know what the results are going to be in advance. And that's just so that they can get their technology out there. They did that with cell phones. Cell phones were not safe. They were cooking our brains early on. They caused brain tumors, a lot of them. Are they safer now? Yeah, but we've never really been honest about the fact that the early ones weren't safe. So save your old cell phones, because someday somebody will say, we need evidence. We want to prove that these guys went after us to harm us. We want to prove that they gave us phones that were cooking our brains and causing problems. I think that's a good idea. Save your old cell phone, hand it in someday for that. This central government is trying to claim that they have the rights to give us our rights, take away our rights, and they don't. All of these gun laws are infringements and unconstitutional. Especially the short-barreled shotgun thing that they screwed up Randy Weaver on. And by the way, we think that Ruby Ridge might have been a false flag in order to draw out conservatives so that the FBI could go after them, to draw out the people that were reactive to such overreaching. But remember, Lon Huruhuchi started the shooting in Waco, and he's the one that executed Vicky Weaver. He's living somewhere freely on the large. Pretty sure they've given him a whole different, persona, if you will, and he's undercover with the FBI. Oh, and by the way, Adolf Hitler didn't die during World War II. Our FBI had files on him. He ended up going south. He went down to Antarctica for quite a while, about 1965. They went into Argentina. So he survived that thing and lived to about the age of 91. They knew where he was all the time. Oh, and Joseph Mengele. He was brought over to the States and treated royally. He was able to continue his experiments right here. Matter of fact, he spent most of his life in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, you tell me who rules the world today and who controls things and makes things like that happen. I mean, after their claims and their accusations about him, the angel of death, his twin experiments and all that stuff, I need you to understand they've done their best to mesmerize us and deceive us. We are living at a time in which all the foundations of everything are lies. So you cannot have good science if you've got a bunch of lies. You cannot have good science if it's politicized and the communists are running the show. We can't even have open, proper discussion among scientists anymore. That's all controlled. We can't have it on these social platforms anymore. It's all controlled. Either you fall into line and tout the party line, or you don't get a voice. I'd love to talk freely, but I got to be careful. If you don't know who's ruling over you, if you haven't figured out who they are, then I can't help you. This platform won't allow me to. If you don't understand what's really going on with these diseases and the treatments, then I can't help you. Yeah, I could help you, but they'll take me right off. And all I could do would be to bring questions out. I couldn't tell you the doggone full truth. I just couldn't do it. I would love to have an open dialogue. I'd love to see that, but we don't have free speech anymore. So there's no constitution. They tore that up a long time ago. This errant federal government thinks that they're going to rule on everything from down in D.C. I think we ought to wall up that Washington district of criminals and keep those people in there and let them serve life sentences inside the walls in D.C. They were only designed, that was only designed to rule the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C., but clearly they've overstepped their bounds. And for you people that think that, my God, I'm going to lose my Social Security, I'm going to lose my, my checks and all that stuff. Yeah, there's a good chance that the whole system will come apart. Matter of fact, if it all come apart, I think we'd be better off. You know, and hopefully within a couple of years we could right these wrongs and pull things together. But it's not going to happen because too many of you want to pass feel-good laws. Too many of you want to violate Constitution because it feels good. You think you know better, and you don't. I mean, the early laws of this country were founded on the laws of the Bible. And there was no test of religion, test of office, at the federal level because it existed at the level of the states. Every state had a religious test. And there were different religions in different states. I guess, I don't remember all the names of those. As I try to access their names, I lose it. But you had different religions in different states. And to accommodate those, the federal government had to be neutral about it. But the states could do what they wanted on that. And now, clearly, we have the devils running the place. They own the place. They stole everything. They stole it all, including you and me.